Well, we've got a very interesting guest here, Samy Barnat, and we're going to talk about the next big crises and how we can protect ourselves from them. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Toby. What about you?
I'm doing smashing, thanks.
Excellent.
Let's just ask people listening, first of all. Imagine 5 years ago, if somebody told them that in the future there would be a global pandemic caused by coronavirus and that we'd all have to wear masks and stay at home. Do you think they would have believed it?
I'm pretty sure most of us would have said, that's crazy. You're
Yeah.
watching too many series.
Yeah, exactly. But COVID happened. What we thought was impossible turned out to happen.
Exactly. So that really should be a lesson for all of us.
Mm,
We think that we know what the future will look like, but we don't. We just
yeah.
don't. COVID is evidence of that. Nobody would have predicted most of us wouldn't have predicted that. So basically, we could not predict COVID because most of us, it's a bias in psychology, quite famous.
Mm,
We think that the future will look like the present or the past,
mm,
we base our prediction on our own experience, and our experience is the past or the present, but the future is not going to look like the past or the present.
yeah.
Definitively not, for sure. There are constantly new problems, and the only way to predict the future is to study the data,
Mm.
basically.
And what does the data tell us?
That data tell us that the next big crisis in the future is going to be a lack of food, water, and energy. It sounds crazy now because we have abundance today. Today we have at least in rich countries, right? Like in Europe and in USA. But in the future, it's not going like that for a different reason. We are going to see them one by one. So the first one is a possible economic crisis as bad as the Great Depression,
Wow.
something most of us have studied in school. The Great Depression happened everywhere in the world in 1929, and rich countries had to worry about food because of a huge economic crisis. So that's the first possible short-term crisis. And then you have two long-term reasons why we would have to worry about food in the future. The first one is the end of fossil fuels,
Yeah.
and the second one is the destruction of our soil fertility. So yeah, if you want, we can go dig into each one of them, right?
Yeah. Well, let's do that then, shall we?
Okay, so first, the possible economic crisis. Why is that a risk? So
Mm.
simply because our government created a lot of money during COVID to save all the companies that were going to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Many of us know about that.
Mm.
So what is the result of that? So when you create a lot of money, it causes the value of our money to drop a lot. It's called hyperinflation. Like it
Mm.
happened many times. So is it a risk? It's always the same because it doesn't happen on a daily basis. We can think, is it really going to happen?
Mm.
It did. It happened many times in history and in many countries. So yeah, it's a real risk. At the moment, there is a lot of inflation in the world. So how far will it go? We know that. I know in UK, for example, the price of so many things has increased a lot, right?
Yeah.
So it's due to many factors, but that's one of them because we have created a lot of money. We have created a lot of money. So how far will it go? That's the
Mm.
question, because the worst case, maybe you've seen some of you listening have seen those pictures of people in Second World War with like they had to carry money with how is it called in English, like a small like
Mm.
with reels, you
Suitcase?
know yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That gives us an idea. Exactly. That
Yeah.
gives us an idea. Yeah, because the money was so
Mm.
worthless that you need a lot of it to do basic things like buy bread. And so that's the hyperinflation. That's a risk for us.
Yeah.
And yeah, and this if this happens, it means that we are not sure we will be able to buy food. For
Yeah.
example, it's happening in Venezuela.
Mm.
In Venezuela, people are doing objects with money. The money is so worthless that they use it to do bags.
Yeah.
Imagine a bag
Wow.
made with paper. Yeah, and they have problem to eat, so it's a big worry. And again, I know it sounds incredible, but think about COVID. Nobody would have thought it was possible, but it happened. The war with Russia, nobody would have thought it was possible, but it happened. So the future is not going to be like the present or the past. We have to put this in our head. It's very, very important for all of us. So yeah, just quickly to finish on the hyperinflation risk. How can we protect ourselves from this? So it's simple. The first very simple protection we can all do for that is to buy at least 1 year of food that can be stored for a long time without spoiling, like pasta, rice, or beans. This type of food. Some of these food, for example, you can keep them for 10 years or 15 years. So in the worst case, you have this type of stock. In the worst case, you're going to use it, maybe it's going to take 10 years, but you are going to use, if you have let's say 1 year of stock of pasta or whatever, or rice or beans, 1 year of stock. In worst case, you will be using it slowly in 10 years, so you are not wasting your money. And if it happens, you at least you have something you can survive on, because and many people have started to prepare for this. I want to say that I'm not like the only one speaking about that. Many people have actually started to prepare for that. So it's not because most of us don't know about that it's not real, Again, so this is for the short-term protection.
Yeah. And in terms of the long-term protection as well, there's risks because it's the end of fossil fuels and oil. We've got a big problem because people obviously need oil and gas to drive and to import the foods and clothes and plastics and metals and to heat our homes as well. It's everywhere, but it's going to run out at some point, isn't it?
Exactly. Totally right, mate. Exactly. That's perfectly said.
So what you're saying is that the end of cheap oil could mean a lack of food for us. How does the price of oil actually affect food supply, and which countries are concerned? Is it going to happen to poor countries or maybe richer countries as well?
Excellent question. So an expensive price of oil affects food supplies in many ways. First, there is the cost of transporting food, right? I mean, remember that for most of our food has to travel long distance. We don't produce food locally, even in which country. Most of our food, a big part of it comes from far away. And with the war in Russia, we just had an example. In Spain, particularly, many truck drivers. So we had an example of oil price going up with the war in Russia. That's, global, because Russia is a big supplier of petrol for a big part of the world. And in Spain, I live in Spain, and I can tell you, many truck drivers at some point, not a long time ago, the war in Russia didn't start a long time ago. They had to stop to work just because the petrol was too expensive. And as a result, basically, they were not making profit by working, because they have obviously to use petrol to do their job, truck drivers, to transport products. And because petrol was so expensive, basically they were losing money working. So they stopped working. Imagine that. And in many supermarkets, as a result, some products were lacking just because the truck drivers couldn't transport them. So, and it just happened recently in Spain. So we are talking about Europe, right? We are not talking about poor countries. And everywhere in Europe now, with the war in Russia, we have seen prices increase for so many products. Many of us have already seen that. And so inflation, it's only the beginning. That's what we have to know, because it impacts everything. The price of oil impacts everything, because we use oil to transport most products. Most jobs are related to oil. So,
But somewhere down the line, won't there be another source of energy that will replace fossil fuels and save us?
Excellent question. Of course, that's what all of us are going to think of. Renewable energy and nuclear, we hear so much about that. But unfortunately, it's not that simple. Unfortunately, no. There has been recently an increase of oil production because we became able to extract shale oil, but this is not enough. enough to extend the world production for a long time. So because some people believe that, oh yeah, we discover shale oil. So no, we have a lot of oil, we just discovered recently a new form of oil, but no, that's completely wrong. It's not going to be enough to extend the world production for a long time. Just to clarify that shale oil is not going to be the solution. Second, the one everybody is thinking about, renewable energy. It cannot replace fossil fuels at the same scale. Why? Because the power efficiency provided is very low compared to fossil fuels. So what does this mean? It means that you need a lot of renewable energy to produce only a bit of what we can produce with fossil fuels, with oil. Yeah. So it's a big problem, right? Because now with a little bit of oil, we have a lot of energy. But with renewable energy, you need a lot of renewable energy, a lot of wind, a lot of solar panel to produce only a bit of what we need. Yeah. So that's a big deal. It's a big deal. Actually, it's not a coincidence if we chose fossil fuels, because for most of history, humanity has been using renewable, like wind in windmill, ships with wind, but we discover a very dirty but very powerful source, fossil fuels. And that's why we build our civilization on it. It's because it's very powerful. So when we run out of it, thinking that we can just replace it with renewable, it's an illusion. We can replace it partially, but it's not going to be powerful enough to have the same level of consumption we have today. Yeah. So it means that our society is going to partially collapse for sure. It's going to partially collapse for sure, unfortunately. And we can talk quickly about nuclear. It's the same. Nuclear, it's much more powerful, but it's hard and it's long to build. So to build a nuclear plant, it takes 5 years, but usually they go beyond schedule, so 10 years, plus the expertise. So to make it short, nuclear, it's very difficult again to replace fossil fuel with nuclear. So why is all of that important? Just because we have to know that the system is going to partially collapse because it's based on fossil fuels, and the alternative energy, they cannot give us the same level of energy. So it should be a concern for all of us, because our job depends on energy. Everything depends on energy. Everything, absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And to convince you even more, there is a report from experts from Shell that you can find on internet. Okay, so anyone can check that. And it states that to change the energy system of a whole society is very long. In the report, I quote the word from memory. They say that 10 years is a blink of an eye, which means you do nothing in 10 years, basically. And 100 years is an idea of a duration. So let's take 50 years as a rough idea. 50 years to change from an energy system to a new, which is what we need to do, right? Because we need to transition from fossil fuels to a new system, which can be renewable or nuclear, So it's clear, when you know that, we said on this podcast that in 10 years, the end of cheap oil will start. And we need 50 years to do a transition. This is a realistic duration. We don't have time. It's obvious it's going to collapse, It's going to collapse partially, at least partially, just because we don't have a realistic plan. Politics, they didn't put a realistic plan in place. They depend on the free market. It's going to go bad, for sure.
Our most powerful source will just be a really bad thing when it runs out, because that's what makes our society work. So I suppose the question is, when will our natural resources run out? And you actually wrote a book to try and answer that, right?
Excellent. You just made an excellent point, Toby. Excellent point. It's the most important question is when. You are absolutely right. When is the end of fossil fuels? When is it? The end of oil. Let's take the main one, the end of oil. When is it? So it's not an easy question to answer.
Yeah.
Why? Just because the oil producers, they hide data. So oil producer, I'm speaking about Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Venezuela, the one people know about. They hide because if they tell you I'm going to run out of oil, it makes investors run away. Yeah, of course, if I'm an investor, I'm not going to invest in these countries if they tell me oil is going to run out soon, right?
Yeah.
So they lie.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. But that's why it's difficult to know exactly when. We need, yeah. It's difficult to know exactly when, but for sure it's going to happen.
Yeah. So I guess we need to see the data to know when, right?
Exactly. So the data. So the data I'm going to use to make an estimation, they are from Rystad Energy. It's an independent energy research and business intelligence company. It's a world-leading analysis company. Really, they work with the greatest oil and gas company. So it's solid. Basically, they even work with the International Energy Agency. So it's just to tell you that what I'm saying is serious. It's actually the strongest source of data almost we can have in the world. So yeah, it's really.
Yeah. And what does the source say? Does it definitively tell us when we will reach the end of oil and gas?
Exactly. So they give an idea, because even them who are the best experts, they cannot say accurately, like within 1 month. It's just a rough idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just to give you a rough idea. So first of all, I have to say that what matters, it's not the end of oil and gas. It's the end of cheap oil and gas. Oil and gas. Why? It's very important. Because the end of oil and gas, it might be later, like 2050, let's say. But a long time before that, we have to worry about the end of cheap oil and gas, because as soon as it's too expensive to be the basis of the economy collapses. You know, as soon as oil and gas is too expensive, so we don't have to wait for the end. We have to wait for when it's too expensive. So to come back to your very good question, when is it going to be too expensive? So first of all, let me just quote the former chairman of Shell, so one of the biggest oil company. Most of us, we know that. So he said, it's pretty clear that there is not much chance of finding any significant quantity of new cheap oil. Any new unconventional oil is going to be expensive. So he's saying exactly what I'm saying, right? Yeah. That what was cheap, we discovered it. What is left to discover is expensive. So now, So now to answer your question, basically with this company I talked about before, Rystad Energy, we have and my book, so crossing different analysis, as a rough idea, 2030. 2030, yeah, it's you know, it's not far. Exactly. Yeah, 2030 could be when we have the end of cheap petrol, at least in Europe, because it depends of the country. Yeah. But in Europe, it could be as soon as 2030.
That's very little time indeed. And what about the last crisis? You mentioned soil fertility destruction there. What does that actually mean?
Sure. So this is something experts in soil know very well. There are microorganisms in the soil, like worms and so on. And these microorganisms are very important because they keep the soil alive by helping rain to penetrate it and for other reasons. So, but the way we currently do agriculture with industrial plowing, you know, how we plowing. So it's destroying this microorganism and the soil. And that's really bad because for all of us, because in many parts of Europe, again, we are speaking about Europe, this and I mean in other parts of the world, much worse. But in USA and Europe, everybody is concerned, basically. That's what I want to know. I want to say, no one should think I'm protected from this because no, nobody is. So the soil has started to turn into a desert. And it's called desertification, actually. And so it's very bad because it means we lose soil fertility. We lose the ability of the soil to produce food.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's obviously very bad for all of us. So, and if you, I'm laughing, but it's not funny, really. It's not funny. I mean, it's a really dark future. So, but yeah, to process it, it's something we have to force ourselves to process. So So, and if you add to this global warming in the future, the risk that we can't produce food enough for everyone is very high, because global warming, it makes it even worse, the desertification, obviously, with high temperatures,
And how do we actually protect ourselves from these three crises that you mentioned? The economic crisis, the end of oil and destruction of our environment, including the soil.
So you have two solutions that you must do in parallel. The first solution is to save as much money as you can, and if necessary, to sell your house, if you have one, obviously, to buy a new house on a small piece of land. The important is the land, so that you can slowly, week after week, and just to tell you that many people have started to do that. Again, I'm not like, for example, in France, since COVID and since this type of ideas are becoming more popular, about the crisis coming in the future with the end of oil, some people are famous talking about this in France. It's a topic that is taken very seriously now.
Yeah.
So, and many people have started to buy land. They have actually started to either save money or sell their property to buy land, so to protect that. So so it's just for you to know that it's not like only a few people are talking about this now. So yeah, it's important to have land, just because slowly, week after week, month after month, year after year, you're going to be able to learn to grow some food on your own. So at least the day the economic system collapse, you can survive. You can actually survive.
Yeah.
Simple. If you look at the past, it makes sense, because if we were born before the oil revolution, most of us would have been farmers. I know it's crazy, but it's a fact. Many of us don't want to hear that, but it's just the truth. If you look before the oil revolution, more than 60% of the population was farming. That it was like that. And of course, with the end of oil, many of us will have to go back to farming, because the only reason why we have so little people feeding in our society, it's like that today, so little people feeding so many of us, it's because we have machines, because we have fossil fuels, including oil and fertilizer, which increase a lot the production of food. So that's why we were able to reduce to such a small extent the number of farmers we have in rich countries, in UK, in USA, in Europe, but when we go to the end of oil reserve and the end of fertilizer, it's going to go back to what it was. We don't, with these machines, they cannot be, the source of energy of those machines cannot be anything. We had fossil fuels. We are going toward the end. Like we explain in this podcast that it's not easy to replace fossil fuels. You cannot just replace them with renewable energy like that, or with nuclear. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. So yeah. So it sounds crazy, but the future, it's not going to be hyper futuristic, like cars flying. No, it's going to be more a comeback to a more basic life. Yeah, it's definitely going in this direction. It depends on how the technology is going to evolve as well, to be fair. But energy, it's not something which depends too much on technology. It depends about it to an extent. For example, there is the nuclear fusion, that could save us. But we have been developing this for 50 years, just to give you. And until now, we don't manage to go anywhere to make it a viable source of energy. So it's very complex. You cannot just find energy like that. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. The second part of the solution is to rebuild your life around a smaller local society that you can control. So today, your life completely depends on globalization. To anyone listening to this, I'm speaking to you, right? Your life completely depends on globalization. Food and products coming from the other side of the world. And the end of oil is the end of this globalized society. So to prepare you must speak with people in your local community and start to organize yourselves and start to plan for the future. I know it's not your immediate worry now because you have a job and so on, but it's coming, yeah, slowly. And some people have started to prepare for that. So it's just, yeah. So basically, it's about building a local community where you can have local food, local water, renewable local electricity and heating. Because just like, for example, in UK now, heating is so expensive. You know, how, how far are we going to continue like this? At some point, nobody is going to be able to afford it, you know? So you need other solutions. You cannot just rely on the market and rely on the business to just take care of all the problems. It's not going to work. Yeah. So, and just to convince you that it's realistic, if you check YouTube, you're going to see people doing it, doing what I'm talking about. They already have a local community. They started to have more autonomy. So yeah, it's something to prepare slowly. Obviously, it's not something that you do in one day. First, you think about it. You convince yourself that it's going to come. This takes a transition, and then you can do this type of thing. So and there are many in USA, for example. There is one Burlington, a town. 70% of voters, they approved to fund a switch to electrification. This just gives you an example of something that can be done when people are aware. Yeah. So it means basically they voted to have most of their energy become electric. So instead of sending money to countries which have fossil fuel, they keep their money locally. It's good for the local economy on top of that. So it's clever. It's very clever for everybody, for them to prepare about the future, for their job, for everything. So yeah, and just something I must say is if you live in a city, it's going to be where it's going to be the worst because, you know, when oil, you know, when oil prices are high, cities, they cannot afford to continue to import food. It's a big deal. If you live in a city and oil prices are high, within few days, you finish the food. And then what? Then it's civil war. You know what I mean? That's this type of future. Well, you know, if we are not prepared, it's like COVID. It surprises us. It surprises us. And we are not prepared because we don't think this type of thing can happen. But no, it can and it will. It can and it will for sure. So yeah, in my book, I explain now just to have a bit of a broader picture. In my book, I explain why it was a mistake to build our lives around societies which are so big that we don't understand them. We don't understand and we don't control our societies, right? You would agree with that. Yeah. So for example, we call our countries democracies, but it's a lie. It's a lie. Democracy, it means power to the people, but we don't have power. Yeah. I mean, that's why so many of us, we disconnect from politics just because we don't control anything. We vote. It doesn't make any sense. They don't do what they say anyway. So only the rich people have power in our system. And it's bad for all of us. It's not nothing. So it's a disgusting way of doing politics today, basically, and it has to stop. We should be able to control politics, to be able to control our lives, you know, and we can do it. Actually, there is an alternative system to what we can see today. It's what I describe in the book, and it can be summarized in 2 keywords. It's very important. I highlight this because it's very important for all of us. So it's local and decentralized. What does this mean? 2 keywords: local and decentralized. So it's new. This new system, it offers both more justice and more freedom. It's like merging the good of Republican and Democrat, or left and right, or what is it in UK? Tories and
Conservative and Labour.
Conservative. Exactly. It's like merging both, the good of both. So what is this? What is this new alternative system? Okay. So politics, it's really about controlling how we live as a society, and we want the freedom to decide ourselves. We don't want few politicians far from us in the capital to decide our life, you know, because they are disconnected from us. They are in the capital, so disconnected from us. So the only way we can take back control, it's by building our own local society as independent as possible. Yeah. Okay. So that's clear. Yeah. And for the future, it's going to be good anyway, like we said before.
So what does that mean in practice? How do we actually take control of politics?
A very good question. Very good question, Tommy. Thank you for that. So yeah, in practice, the simplest way, it's called the citizen initiated referendum. So what does it, if you don't know what this is, citizen initiated referendum, you should be really angry if you don't know what this is, because it means your politicians don't respect you. Let me explain why I say that. Because all the Swiss people, for example, they know exactly what I mean when I say citizen initiated referendum. So because the Swiss people, they have this right. So why, for example, in UK, why do you not have this right? So what is it? Let me explain. It simply means that if enough people sign a petition on internet, for example, they can control their politicians. Imagine this. It's amazing. Like, so if they betray you, you can stop them. You can actually stop them just by signing a petition. So people actually have power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because in our current system, we don't have power. We vote one time every 5 years. Would you call that power?
Not really.
You know what I mean? It's crazy. Like, and on top of this, they promise so many things. And would you say that they keep their promises?
Definitely not.
You know what I mean? So it's a crazy system. Why do we still have this in so many countries in the world when, for example, the Swiss people, they can actually sign a petition and they can vote the law, directly the law. They can tell politicians, no, you will not do that. Or you will do that because this is what we want. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Why we don't have that? And just to tell you that awareness about that has increased a lot. In France, for example, we recently had a movement called the Yellow Jacket, and they asked specifically for this right. It was violent. We almost had a revolution in France, like before COVID, just before COVID. And people understood that if they get this right, this single right of let me say it again, citizen initiated referendum. It just means that the referendum is initiated by the people. They say, okay, we want to discuss this, or we want this specific law to be voted, and we decide what topic. We don't let politicians decide everything. You know what I mean? Because we can't trust them. They are so corrupted with lobbies, rich people influencing them all the time. It doesn't make sense, this system. You know what I mean? So what you could do with this citizen-initiated referendum, just imagine, you could defend your money, your job, your family, like a country with just election, which is what we have in United States, in UK, in Europe. We just have election. We elect politicians, right? And then we forget about politics. That doesn't deserve to be called a democracy. It doesn't. Democracy, it means power to the people. Demos, kratos, demos, people, kratos, power. It's from the Greek. They created this system. And we don't have power. We just don't have power. Really, to vote, it's not power. Because it's not, because the rich people, they buy election, they finance the people who they want to be elected. There is so much corruption, plus they do promises that they don't keep, you know what I mean? And then you cannot control. It's not power. It's a joke. It's a joke of a system, really. It's what it is. And I'm not the first one to say this, actually. You have people like Noam Chomsky who have been criticizing this a lot. So to have this citizen-initiated referendum, it would mean a real democracy in your country.
So how can we actually get this right?
Excellent question. Let's be practical, shall we?
Yeah.
So it's an excellent question. So I'm not saying it's going to be like ordering in McDonald's. Obviously, it's not as simply as an application and you just click on it. But it's worth it. But it's not impossible at all. We need to remove this idea from our head, because if we start like that, we will never get it. So how do we get it? It's not that hard. We just need a significant part of the population to be aware of the talk we just had, If a significant part of the population in your country know that your country is not a true democracy just by voting, and know that there is an alternative system which exists in Switzerland, for God's sake, in Switzerland, they have it, and they are one of the best economy in the world, Switzerland, in terms of wealth per habitant. Obviously, it's a small country, but in terms of wealth per habitant, it's one. So there is absolutely no reason not to get it, right? So basically, we just have to spread the word. All of us. Spread the word. Yeah. Speak to your friends, your family. Just tell them, explain why the country is not a true democracy, why voting, it's a joke because finally politicians are corrupt. They don't do what they promise. And there is a better system. When a significant part of the population is aware that there is a better system, that's it. Your country is going to change because next time they will vote, they are going to expect the progress to be made, right?
Yeah.
It make who would want a worse system if you can have a better one? No one. We just need awareness. Yeah. So it will take time, of course, but it's going to happen in months or in years. We are talking about the type of change. It's not going to happen in weeks. It's months or years. But it's how the word spread. It's how the word spread. The word spread slowly, but we all have to do our part. When enough people are aware, it's going to change. So it's your responsibility, my responsibility, the responsibility of everybody to spread the word. And we have social media, so we have tools. We have tools to spread the word, So yeah, just a slow change, but never lose hope. Not because it's slow, don't think it's not going to happen. This is the key. All the big change in history, they happen because some people they pushed for it. They just didn't just give up after a few weeks. Oh, it doesn't work. No, you know what I mean.
Yes.
And now just to talk about the second way. So that was the first way of changing politics. Yeah. For all of us, for our good. The second way to control politics. So that's kind of exclusive to my book. It's a new idea because the Swiss system obviously exists in Switzerland. So it's about going a step further and building a new system. It's about building. So what do I mean by that? First, we have to understand, like we said in this podcast, that this system is going nowhere because we are destroying the environment. Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So we cannot. What we have to accept is that we cannot just elect a bunch of politicians and expect them to solve all our problems. Yeah, it's just mission impossible. This society is too complex. We have to understand that when we ask politicians to solve all the problems or such a big part of problems of society, we ask them something impossible. So it's not even their fault. Of course there is corruption and all of that. True, but the system is just too complex. So if we expect something impossible from them, they will fail, and they fail constantly. Anyone who has worked quite high in a company, like as a manager, that the higher you go, the more mistake you do, because even one company, it's hard to manage. So a country, it's crazy. We ask them something impossible. It's just too complex. So we are talking about the free market, and because that's what we ask them to regulate. We ask them to regulate the free market. But basically, it's what we are asking them to do, and they can't do that, and that's why communism failed. By the way, because communism, you had a lot of power in the hand of a few politicians, and it was just too much responsibility. So they failed, and now we are still doing the same mistake. Less because we have the free market, but we are still giving too much responsibility to politicians. This is key. To understand this, it's key. Because the day we understand this, we are going to start to say, okay, we take responsibility. We have us, the people, and that's where the new system I was talking about come in. So what is this new system? It's just to give you a rough idea, right? It's just to give you a rough idea. I'm just going to speak about the ideal solution. We might not have enough money to actually have exactly this ideal solution, but it's useful to understand the direction we should take. So the ideal solution would be to have everyone doing politics 1 day per week instead of a normal day of work, and eventually be paid for it. Okay, so like I said, it's an ideal solution. Do we have the money to actually pay everyone to do politics 1 day per week? It depends. First of all, it depends because this would not be only a cost. Yeah, we should not see it only as a cost. So, because if everyone was doing politics, this would improve our society in such a way that we would actually save money as well. This is something we have to have in mind. Just imagine millions of brains who are actually solving the problems of society. It's the type of creativity and efficiency that our system lacks. And second, it depends because if we don't involve more people in politics, it might actually cost us more. This is very important. It's very important. We are all concerned, really. Because the way we are doing business now, it destroys our environment. Most of us are aware of that. We are using resources like water and food in a way that is not sustainable in the long term. Yeah. So what do you think will happen when we get to the point when we don't have enough food and water for everyone? Wars. We are going toward wars. Yeah. This is reality. Yeah? It's the harsh reality, and it's coming slowly, but it's coming. Something we forget, but we should have this in our mind. We cannot just think about the present. The future is important as well, right? So the cost to continue with the system we have now is much higher than it would be to change the system. So yeah, paying everyone to do 1 day of politics per week, maybe this would be too much, but we need something in the middle, So I'm not even speaking about the cost of climate change, because for example, some of the floods in UK have costed billions of pounds, okay, per year. Sorry, per year. I was not accurate enough, per year, and it's nothing compared to future costs. For the world, some economies, they have estimated the future cost in trillions of dollars, not billions, trillions. Wow. Yeah, that's how many, this is our money from taxes, and so on. So, or our businesses, which are going to all suffer, lose jobs, so on. That's what we are talking about. So it's very important for all of us. So we have to understand that we just can't continue with the system. Yeah. Otherwise, we are going to suffer a lot. All of us. We are. This is reality, unfortunately. So we just need to change the system. Yeah. And if we can't afford to have everyone, like I was saying, if we can't afford to have everyone working on politics 1 day per week, it could be 1 day per month. Or it could be like in France, they had an experiment and it worked pretty well, despite what some negative people will say about it. It worked pretty well because they randomly selected a group of people from the general population, and they told them, you are going to work on some political issues like climate change and the ecological crisis and so on, and randomly selected people, and it was very good because these people, obviously, they were not corrupted like so many politicians can be, corrupted by lobbies, big corporations, they pay politicians, they influence politics all the time. Brussels, Washington, those are places of lobby. All companies, they make sure to have people close to politicians to influence them as much as possible. This is normal politics, So, but these people randomly selected, they were not corrupted. They were like us, and they wanted to defend our interests because they are very similar. Their interest is our interest, right? So, and just to say, this could be another solution, to have at least a part of the population randomly selected and working with politicians to represent us, and we follow them through media. This is what happened in France. There are so many solutions. What I'm just saying, we discussed the citizen-initiated referendum. We could all have an application on our phone, and we vote laws. Or we raise an issue, we all vote, and when we think this should be discussed, and politicians, they have to do it because we want it. This is a true democracy. So there are many solutions. This is what I'm saying. But we have to change the system, definitively. We have to make it more democratic and participate more with full transparency, not like now. So yeah, basically, those are the many solutions we have to bring a true democracy where people have real power to control politics. So we have to see it like an investment. If we, okay, it's going to cost us money now, but it's going to save our environment for once, because the ecological crisis, and I'm telling you this, there is absolutely no doubt. The ecological crisis, sorry, it cannot be solved only by politicians. We have to involve the people. We have to take, all of us take responsibility, because the ecological crisis, it's a crisis of responsibility. You know what I mean? It's just because we are disconnected from politics and we consume. It's not our role to regulate. So we just, we outsource it. Yeah, they will solve the problem. We just worry about consuming. No, we cannot solve this crisis like that. We will never. The politicians, they for decades, they have been trying and they couldn't and they won't. Because even with their best effort, the only way to solve the ecological crisis is for all of us to start to think every day, okay, if I do this, I'm destroying the environment. Do I really need these things that I'm purchasing? Do I really need this? You know what I mean? And thinking about our kids, thinking about our future, not only thinking about the short term. And that can only happen if we have the responsibility to solve it, if we are paid for it, if it's our job, if tomorrow it's our job to solve these problems, that changes everything, because it becomes our job. You know what I mean? And we could, we could be paid, if we are paid for this. People are different when it's just the job of someone else or when it's their job. You know what I mean? They start to feel guilty. They start to feel, okay. They start to think about it more. If you do 1 day of politics per week, everybody's going to be thinking about this, because we will have to. You know what I mean? No, we don't have to. We just do our job. We go on with our life. The ecological crisis is getting worse and worse. So few people care, and we are going towards wars. So yeah. So basically, step by step, how would we do that? We should remove the power from the capitals. So less power in London, Washington, Paris. That's finished. It's too much power in the hands of too few people, and that's not effective. It's not good for the most of us, right? We want to control our lives, so we take the power away from capitals and we localize the power. So it means now the decision concerning our lives will be taken locally, like they should, just because we want to be able to control. And if it's in the capital, we cannot control it. Come on, you know what I mean? What are we going to do? Go in front of the parliament with, we are not happy. They don't care. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So many people have done it with so little effect.
Yeah.
With so little effect. So we want, if our politicians are local, then we can control them. We can go to see them and say, this is not acceptable. And we can actually, with the type of system we said before, we can actually decide directly. If we are involved 1 day per week, we will decide, They are just going to be like secretaries, like administrative. The politicians are going to become what they should be, just an administrative who tell who does what you tell him to do, Not someone who think he's like the king and because that's how they end up being. You know what I mean? They think they are above us when they should just serve us. Basically, that's kind of the second system. So I would like to add that to highlight how effective this system would be, we just have to realize that instead of having a few people in charge, we would have millions of millions of people in charge. Yeah, because we would all be involved in politics, and it's obviously more effective. You cannot compare a few brains to millions of brains. You know what I mean? Some people are going to say, yeah, but some people are stupid. Okay, some people have less education. It's true, yeah. But never forget, this is very important, because some people are going to criticize the system just with this point. Say we cannot give political power to everybody. It's a big mistake. It's a big mistake. Why? There is a law called the Pareto Rule. Basically, it says that most of the time, 20% of the people do 80. It's just a rough idea. Okay. It's not accurate. It's just to give us a rough idea. But 20% of people do 80% of the job. And it's true. It's like that in life. You have some people who take more responsibility, who work more. You know what I mean? So you have to think, if we give the power to everyone, basically, of course, some people are still going to be disconnected. They are going to do a bad job at it, for sure, for sure. But you are going to have these 20% of leaders who are always, and they are going to do an amazing job. And you compare this 20% of leader, which 20% of a population, let's just take UK, 60 million people in UK. So how much is that? It's millions of people, millions of leaders. You compare that to a few politicians. You can't even compare in terms of effectiveness. You know what I mean? You can't even compare. And just to give you an idea of the type of success we are talking about, the free market is very effective. The whole world now has kind of adopted the free market. Communism is dead. Yeah. So most countries in the world, they have adopted the free market. And why the free market was so effective compared to communism, for example, which failed? Just because the free market, instead of giving the responsibility to manage the economy to few politicians, like in communism, the responsibility is the responsibility of anyone who want to do it, the entrepreneurs, So basically, you have the economy managed by millions of people instead of a few people. And it's much more effective. And that's why everywhere in the world, you have the free market now, In most countries, communism it's dying, if not dead. And this is the next step. This is about doing the same with politics. We did it with the economy, right? This is a free market. Next step is we do it with politics. We decentralize politics. This is the key word. We decentralize politics. And if we are going to see the same type of crazy improvement that we saw with the free market compared to communism, for sure, it's going to be much more effective, much more flexible, adaptable as a system, because everyone is going to be thinking about politics, implementing it in their lives. We are talking about a revolution, like world changing, really. And I'm not exaggerating, really. And we need this. We really need this. So that's kind of what I wanted to say on this new system. And I mean, we just have to spread the word about it. That's how we are going to change our lives. And let's not forget, we need this. So many crises are coming, ecological, political, economic. So I'm just speaking about saving our family and ourselves. Yeah. Because now we might not see how hard it's going to hit us. But remember, we had COVID, even if we didn't believe we could have something like that. And what is coming in the future is really dark, like we are talking about, like we said in this podcast, wars for food, the ecological crisis is going to be really bad, and economical crisis as well, with a lot of unemployment. So we have to start to take politics into our hands. This is the conclusion.
Yes. So that's it for politics. How do we take back control of economics?
Just with local currencies. Just to tell you, there are some cities that have started to do that. So, for example, in UK, in Bristol, they created the Bristol Pound. Don't know if you heard about that.
I don't think I've heard of it before, which surprises me, because I've been to Bristol many times and never seen the pound.
Yeah, of course, because not all the business are part of it. Only a part of Bristol. So you are right. Yeah. It's developing. It's developing. But they do have that. So it's a local currency, and it's amazing, because when you have a local currency, that's how you take back control of economics, with a local currency. When you do that, you are protected from financial crisis. And we should all remember that there was a crisis in 2008, a global crisis. So many people lose their jobs, their homes because of it. And the only way to protect yourself from the system is to have a local currency. So basically, the message message is that we need to say again the two key words: decentralization and localization, which means that we need to remove the power from capital, from London. We need to take back the power locally and build a local system as autonomous as possible, as independent as possible, and protect it from the crises which are coming. End of oil, soil destruction, destruction of the ecology. Those are big crises. And it's very important for us to know that if we don't do something, it will happen. Like COVID. If we don't do something, it will happen.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Samy, for helping us be aware of this painful future that's coming and how we can protect ourselves from it. Where can we find out more information about your work?
So my book, A New Way of Life, is available on Amazon, and people can also join our community of 1 million followers with any social media you prefer. They are listed on my website, samybarnat.com. So it's SAMYBARNAT, samybarnat.com. Thank you. Thank you, Toby.